Tighten your lines as we get ready to sail the seven seas on the Political Pirate Podcast. Join Captain Ted Yoho and the salty dog, John Martin, as they search far and wide for the greatest treasure of all, the truth. From local Florida news to nationwide stories and the globe beyond, we've got it all mapped out. Now here's your hosts, the salty dog, John Martin, and Captain Ted Yoho.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the 3 Ps, the Political Pirate Podcast, with your host, the old salty dog here, John Martin, and the captain of our pirate ship, none other than Mr. Ted Yoho. Good morning, Ted.
Good morning, John, and I might have to make you the captain after I saw the catch of fish you got over the weekend.
Yeah, I had a great,
Good job there.
Great weekend. It was good weather. Red snapper season is open, and most weekends will find me this time of year on the water. So yes, it was good. But I'm glad to be here in the studio of Steve Spurrier, so to speak, that Spurrier's Gridiron Grill. We're here most Monday mornings. And if you've never been to Celebration Point and Steve Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, you need to check it out. It's right off of I-75. If you see the big Bass Pro when you're coming through Gainesville, it's in that same general complex. Come and
Celebration Point. Celebration Point. Yep. Great museum of the Florida sports history.
No doubt about it. And speaking of all of that, make the call. Call Freddie. You'll see the little emblem come up from time to time on the show. That's how you can join what we're doing, support what we're doing, be a sponsor, help us to educate, motivate, and activate people. And speaking of people who made the call, none other than Archer Automotive made that call. And tell us about them, Ted.
Yeah, our good friends at Archer Automotive, Richard and Joe and the Fiegel family, do a tremendous job on automotive repair. Honest, fast, reliable, and priced reasonably. They're open Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. And give them a call at 352-495-2485 for all your service needs on cars, trucks. I'm not going to say lawnmowers because I don't want to get me in trouble. But they can take care of pretty much everything you have, and they're just great people.
Absolutely. Well, the first story we're going to talk about, Ted, I got to tell you, I wish I could say surprises me or shocks me or whatever, but it's just business as usual. And I entitled it California Crazy because, you know, they had an election almost a week ago now, Tuesday.
Right.
But the counting still continues, and probably the voting by the way they do it. But it is unbelievable, Ted. What are your thoughts about that? And we'll get into it a little deeper.
You know, I think it's a disrespect for the citizens of California, for the electoral process of this country. You know, we're supposed to be one of the most advanced nations on earth, and they can't count these votes. I think, you know, you're going to play that soundbite of President Trump. It's ripe with fraud. And this is what happens when you have mail-in ballots. Mail-in ballots should be for the military, reserved for very special reasons. But not just blanket mail-in ballots. And we're the only developed nation that uses mail-in ballots. And because the other ones, what they found is there was a lot of fraud in it. And we know that happens here. And so California, get your act together.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I don't think they want to get their act together because
no, they don't.
Potentially lose control. And we're going to play this video in just a second with President Trump when he walks out of an interview on Meet the Press this weekend. But one of the things he talked about in there is evidence of fraud, okay? I'm sure there's plenty of evidence of fraud, but here's the thing, Ted. The whole system is a fraud. I mean, to register to vote in California, for God's sakes, all you need is a gym membership card or a label off a prescription bottle. You don't need any kind of ID, passport, none of that kind of stuff. You need an ID from work, which can easily be made up. You need a prescription bottle label. I mean, you can pull that off of anybody's shelf. Or you need a gym membership, for God's sakes. What is the security in that? I mean, so to me, the fraud is baked into it already. The fraud is the system itself, let alone
It really
actual
is.
fraudulent voting.
And what are they trying to accomplish? I mean, in California, what are you trying to accomplish? You're trying to get anybody to vote, anybody that you can hold a mirror up in front of, and not fog it, but they'll accept somebody if they can't fog a mirror, meaning they can't breathe. And what are you afraid of? Are you afraid of honest elections where you may lose power? And see, this is what happens in places like Russia, where Putin even today gets 98% of the vote. Kim Jong Un gets 100%. Anybody that they find doesn't vote for him, they get killed. They get not euthanized. I mean, they get a brutal death. And this happens in all these despotic government-run countries, but it's a despotic-run state in California doing the same thing, and these other liberal progressive states that don't require voter ID. You need an ID to get into Disney World. You need an ID to do pretty much everything. Everybody has an ID that wants one in this country. And this whole narrative about, I know we're going to talk more about this, that it's repressive and suppressive to ask somebody to have a voter ID. Give me a break. You're living in the 1700s and 1800s.
Well, Ted, I've come to the conclusion, especially in California, and I would say it really crosses over into the Democratic Party itself because they love California, is that and I'm just going to say this, I'm not speaking for you, they apparently don't give a damn about the election, and they don't give a hoot about human life, period. Because it's one thing, and it's terrible for our country to give away a fraudulent voter ID and let them register to vote. But for God's sakes, in California, they give people fraudulent driver's license to drive 18-wheelers that have killed people in the great state of Florida, where we're counting the votes in 24 hours or less and everything else. So what they're doing in California is killing people in the state of Florida. So they don't care about human life at all. And you can see that with the homelessness lying in the street, the drug addiction, all of that type of stuff. And like I say, Ted, they just don't give a damn.
They really don't. They have a whole different agenda. And John, we've talked about this over and over again. And it's to destroy America and rebuild it in some kind of communist, socialist utopia that does not work. Name me a country that they're trying to emulate that they want to change America. And this is where the young voters out there that are listening, we got Michael Cruz out of Maryland. I know he's listening. I got an email from him last night. The young voters today, this may be their first presidential election or their second one. There's going to be people on the ballot, and they're going to talk good stories. But you need to look at their political ideology. Are they here to make America stronger and preserve the foundation of this country? And understand it's not a perfect country, but when you start comparing it around the world, there's no place I'd rather live. And I've traveled around the world. And so as we have these arguments or these discussions about California, don't let that happen in your state. California is a broken system, and they're using every excuse they can to maintain power because it's all about power and status. Gavin Newsom, I mean, he just wants to be important. He wants to be on the press. He wants to be the guy, or there's people like AOC wants to be the woman that's in charge and showing you how hard they're fighting for you. But when you look at what they're offering, it's what people don't want. So back to you, John.
Well, we're going to play this video now. This was President Trump on Meet the Press, I think it was, on NBC. They're all the same to me. But President Trump, he gets a bit frustrated, and he walks out of this interview. So let's play this. We'll come back and talk about it.
No, they're not. They're dropping fast because it's a rigged election. Let me tell you, it's 4 days. And they aren't even close to coming up with it.
That's how they count the votes.
You know why they're doing that?
California.
Because they're cheating on the election.
Do you have evidence to support
all
that?
I have to do is look. All I have to do is look.
That's not evidence.
And I listen. And I listen to people. And let's see what happens.
But, sir, that's not evidence.
Do you think it's appropriate?
That's how they count the votes in California.
Do you think it's appropriate that they have an election, and 5 days later, they're nowhere close to picking a winner.
State and local officials acknowledge they are slow. They're urging.
No, they're crooked.
They're urging the votes to be counted quickly. That's how they vote in California.
They're crooked, just like you're crooked. Your press is crooked, and Meet the Press is crooked.
To be fair, I'm not crooked, but let's
really.
Let's
well,
continue.
You play right into their hands.
Let's continue.
You're either crooked or you're stupid. You play right into their hands with this crap. You know that these elections are rigged. Your network knows that they're rigged. You know that I won an election in a landslide, and I got 94% bad press.
But, Mr. President,
you know why I got that? Because you have no credibility.
But you've never presented evidence that it was rigged. Let's keep talking about. I want to talk about Todd.
You have more evidence. There's more evidence than ever presented.
Let's talk about
your elections in this country. We're like a third world country.
But, sir,
your elections are crooked, and you're crooked, and Meet the Press is crooked, and so is ABC and CBS and CNN.
But, Mr. President,
you're one-sided crooked networks. All right, let's call it quits because I've had enough. Thank you, darling. Have a good time.
Mr. President, let's please. I traveled all the way to Wisconsin.
I've sat in the rain.
I know. I traveled all the way to Wisconsin.
On and off.
Ted, we're back. Give us your general thoughts on what happened there, and then we'll break down a couple of things, couple of exchanges that happened.
Well, I think President Trump's absolutely right talking about how they can't count votes there. It's because it's fraud. Does he have proof there's fraud out there right now? No, but we know historically when you have mail-in ballots, there's fraud. When you have supervisors of election that won't clean up their voter roll, it's fraud. And you look at the states that are doing that, they're all the liberal progressive states. So it's just ripe with fraud. And she goes, I want proof. What are you talking about? Where's your proof? You know, and I've been in situations like that where you're on live TV. They throw a question at you. You're trying to come up with the right response. You know, the right response for him is to say, look at the 2016 election, his first one, when President Obama had okayed wiretapping on Donald Trump, a private citizen running for the presidency, and then they concocted the Russian collusion. That was all through Obama, Hillary Clinton, Fusion GPS, the Hillary Clinton campaign, and it's been proven to be true. Look at the Hunter Biden laptop that the press, this lady, people like her in the media that knew the truth, but they would not come out and report it. They suppressed it so they could get Joe Biden in there. Look at the disaster for our nation that was. And so President Trump was absolutely right when he says it's fraudulent. It'll be proven it's fraudulent. I mean, it's so typical when if you remember the 2020 election, when Trump was winning every state, you know, all the ones, and it was like 10:30 at night. I went to bed because I'm like, this is a shoo-in. And then Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, maybe Nevada, and maybe Arizona, he was leading well in advance. You know, it was pretty much a done deal. But miraculously, by morning, he was way behind because they were slow counting and finding ballots, and it went on and on and on. And the same thing is going out in California. It's wrong, and the American people are tired of this, John. I don't care what party it is, but when you have political operatives like Gavin Newsom or the people within those states controlling that, it goes back to the guy that was the strategist for the Democrat Party. We don't care if we're right on the issue. We don't care about that. We just want to win.
Well, Ted, I got one question for you that you might know the answer to because I can't find an example of it. You talked about President Trump leading and all of that kind of stuff. Has there ever been a situation where a Democrat was leading after election night and all of a sudden they found a bunch of ballots and a Republican came back and won? I can't think of a single time. I could name you a dozen times just off the top of my head when the reverse of that has happened, and it's happening right now in California. So I ask again to the audience, chime in on Facebook or wherever you're watching, tell me, can you think of a single time where after the votes were counted on election night, a Democrat was leading and a Republican after a couple of weeks came from behind and took that seat? Because I can't think of one.
I can't either. The closest I can come to that would be the state of Florida in the George Bush, Al Gore run for president. And, you know, it was the hanging Chad. But Gore wasn't ahead. I mean, it was back and forth, back and forth. But since then, no, I can't think of anything, John, where the Republican came to beat the Democrat. No.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you mentioned about the hanging chads in Florida because that brings up a great point to me.
That's my goal, is to stimulate your memory, John,
Well, Chad, think
to
about
keep you
this.
sharp and on your toes.
I appreciate it because I'm sure you would agree with this. We, and I say we collectively as Floridians, were embarrassed by that. What
Oh,
happened in
absolutely.
Florida. And guess what we did? We corrected it. We demanded that it be corrected. And now Florida, as a result of that, probably has the best system for counting ballots in a 24-hour period in the country right now. We made
There
a
really
correction.
is. Well, and we've caught people. We've got people cheating in Broward County. They're going through it right now. And that lady from West Palm Beach was driving around with ballots, and she got thrown out. And then there was a congressman that had ballots in his truck, in his trunk. His name was Joe. He was from Miami area, and I forget his last name, but he's no longer in Congress. But it is, when there's money and power, people are going to cheat to do whatever they can to get the money and power. And what we need as American citizens, as the voter, we want people with integrity to go into office and do what they say they're going to do. And if they don't do it, we, the people, have the power to throw them out. And we need to. They don't own that position. We own that position. And I don't think anybody is in here, in this country, is real happy with the direction of the country. And it's got to change, but you've got to get the right people that are in there, that we put in there, and then hold them accountable. And the way to do that is at the next election.
Absolutely. Well, evidence of fraud. I'll give you some quick evidence of fraud right now in California. If you remember, about 2, maybe 3 weeks ago, they arrested a lady that was out on the street. She was paying homeless people like $5 a piece to register to vote. She's been doing this for years. She admits it. And she was registering them all to the same address, which was an apartment that she used to live in. She didn't even live in there, but she was registering multiple people to the same address. And she admitted her guilt. And that was 2 or 3 weeks ago.
What party do you think she was registering them to?
I'm pretty sure it was the Democrats. but let's break this down.
They're doing the same thing. They're doing the same thing, ballot harvesting up in Minnesota with Ilhan Omar's district. They're taking all these ballots, mail-in ballots, getting people to sign them, getting verification. And a lot of times it wasn't the people signing it was the person getting paid to collect ballots. They go through nursing homes where people are indigent, not indigent, but they're demented. And they get these ballots and they'll tell the person to fill it out. And they're probably holding her hand and making them draw on there and put it in the X there for their signature. And they're doing that, and they're all registering them as Democrats.
Yeah, well, the thing about it, Ted, too, is another law they have in California is what they call the curing of ballots, which happens a little bit everywhere, where if there's a mistake on it, like a signature they can't read right or whatever.
Right.
In California, you have over a month to make corrections on that ballot. Over a month in California. So they could still be counting votes a month from now if they choose.
Yeah, that's just ridiculous. In a country that prides itself on being a constitutional republic with a democratic process, and we can't get it right in this country, but yet we want to tell other countries, oh, you ought to go to this form of government. They're like, give me a break. You guys are a mess. And that's really what's happening. We're losing so much credibility around the world. But more importantly, we're losing credibility and trust in our government because of these shenanigans that they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're going to go a little bit longer on this segment because I want to just keep getting this information out. Then we'll take a commercial break if you're sitting on your edge of your seat waiting on that commercial.
I know you are.
But the lady in that interview with Donald Trump, she says that's how they vote. That's how they vote in California, count the votes. Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's not crooked. And then I love where the President Trump says, well, if you think there's not cheating out there, basically, then you're either crooked or stupid. I mean, one thing about Trump, he don't hide, he don't hold back. But I
You
mean,
know,
really,
it, sometimes you just got to love the guy. I mean, because that's really what needed to be said to that woman, because she's arguing a point she knows isn't true, and she's lying about it. I mean, and she should be out there in California asking the people, why can't you count your votes? Where are they? You know, instead of asking the president what he thought about it, she should. The news story is in California at these places that can't count votes.
yeah. And then the president basically said to her, because she said, I traveled all the way to Wisconsin to interview you and you're walking out and all that. And he told her, he said, well, you know, and this is back to crooked or stupid. He basically told her, you're in league with them. The media is in league with the Democratic Party and these progressives. And, you know, I think he's right about that.
Well, and if you watch the end of it, you got to give him credit here too. He goes, thank you for coming. I appreciate it. See you later. He was very polite.
But I want to play people a video now. This is a guy from MS Now. I watch these shows so you don't have to as a public
I appreciate
service.
it.
But this kind of shows to me about these next couple of videos we're going to play about being in league with it. So Ali Velshi, who's on MS Now, let me just set this up. He's an Indian. He's born in India. He's Muslim. I'm sorry. He's an Indian Muslim from India.
Right.
He was born in Kenya.
Right.
And he lived in Canada for 30 years, and now he's here on MS Now. So I want to set that up for you because he's talking about celebrating America 250 years. Play this video, and we'll come back and talk to the captain about it.
Imperfect records of the thing which is being celebrated. In America's case, anniversaries often gloss over the racial dynamics underlying much of America's history and politics, issues that remain unsolved because America has never actually fully reckoned with its racist past and its original founding sin of slavery. In 1 month, America will mark the 250th anniversary of its founding. Like previous anniversaries, there is a deep unease about this. I feel a deep unease about these celebrations to which I am invited to mark the 250th anniversary of our so-called democracy. Because this 250th anniversary is taking place during yet another period of deep and fundamental and existential unrest in this country, brought on by the country's unresolved racial politics. That's what this is. Women and black Americans have seen their rights taken away. The Voting Rights Act has effectively been gutted. A number of states are continuing to gerrymander their congressional maps ahead of the midterm elections with the explicit effect of taking away political power from black Americans. Louisiana did exactly that just a few days ago. It passed a new map.
I mean, Ted, here you have this guy who I say again is a Muslim of Indian descent, born in Kenya, lived most of his life in Canada, comes to this country, and then turns around and tells you all the reasons why you shouldn't celebrate America's 250th anniversary because of racism and everything else. And he's here, for God's sakes.
Give me a break. Yeah, really. Velshi, Mr. Velshi, feel free to leave. You know, we'll buy you a ticket. You're a Canadian citizen. I don't know if he's an American citizen, but he was born in Nairobi, Kenya, as you pointed out. He's Ismaili Muslim. He's of the Muslim sect. And again, we have freedom of religion in this country, and I honor and respect it, but don't work against our system. You know, here's a guy telling us how bad America is and the racism in here. And he went to the Queen's College in Canada, the Queen's College, you know, the one that brought England brought Portuguese and the Spaniards and all that, brought slavery here. And, you know, I've got a clip here. You know, he's talking about how racist America is. I've got slavery is still going on. You know, so why doesn't he talk about a country that has it going on right now? In Afghanistan, the stuff that's going on over there, they have open slave markets in Afghanistan. They've got the Taliban is arresting women for improper hijab wearing, and they're throwing them in jail. They're raping them. I mean, they're doing all these things. It's happening in Haiti, and he wants to tell us how bad America is he needs to get off the air because he is a political hack job that's fomenting dissent in this country. We had a civil war. Yeah, we had slavery in this country. We didn't invite slavery. I mean, we didn't create it. We didn't invent it. It came here. It was going on in Egypt, 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. During the Crusades, there was over 1 million people from Spain, France, and Italy that were Christians that were enslaved by the Muslims. And the terrible things and atrocities that happened since the beginning of time. It's happened in our past, and it's going to happen in the future. The sex trafficking is slave trade. There's I think 18 million people that are involved in that involuntarily. And this guy wants to tell us how bad America is. We fought a civil war where over 700,000 people paid the price to free the slaves. And then President Lyndon Johnson enslaved the people again with the Great Society that tore the African American family apart, where they had 85 to 90% of the families that had children had a husband, a father, and a mother. And the Great Society that was brought in by a Democrat president, Lyndon Johnson, ruined the family through their social programs because they said the father didn't need to be there. And so this guy is way off base. Why they give him a platform, I don't understand. If he's not an American citizen, I hope they deport him.
Absolutely. Well, talking about like race and slavery and all of that kind of stuff. And, we ended slavery here in the United States, so don't give some credit for that. But every race of people, and I'm not diminishing African slavery, black people that were enslaved in any way, but pretty much every human ancestry has been enslaved at some point. I mean, as far as I can tell, my descendants were Scotch-Irish. And Rome took over all of that area and captured people and either murdered them or enslaved them. So I think it's probably fair to say, if I could trace my whole lineage way back, that somebody I was related to, it might have been 300, 500 years ago or more, was enslaved, murdered, or whatever by some group. And everybody could do that. Everybody.
Yeah, every society on the planet. You can look into Latin Americans. You look at the Incas, the Aztecs. I mean, slavery. It's just what people do, unfortunately, and that's a flaw of humanity. It's always going to be here. But for these people to say how bad America is racist, tell me then, why is any black man or woman, why are they a multimillionaire in this country? Why are they driving Mercedes and Bentleys and survive and flourishing in this country? If it's such a racist country, why are people flocking into this country? Because we're such a racist country. This guy's argument and his dialogue it might be what's his name, Al Sharpton. He's trying to just rekindle this, and it's a tired message. Nobody wants to hear it. Very few people believe this other than the liberal progressives that keep promoting this. The AOCs and the Bernie Sanders, they're suppressing you. No, they're not. I want to get around the Elon Musk. I want to get around the people that have made it and said, you know what, you can do it too. And it's because of a system we have here in America called a constitutional republic that provides opportunity for anybody. It's not free. You've got to put work into it. But by God, try that in any other country.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned about the black millionaires and billionaires. Well,
even billionaire black people.
Yeah, if you listen to Obama a few years back and AOC just recently, if you're a black billionaire, clearly you didn't build it and you can't possibly have earned it, because Obama said you couldn't have built your business. And AOC just recently said you can't earn $1 billion. So if you're black out there and you have a few $100 million or $1 billion, I tip my hat to you. But AOC said you couldn't possibly earn it.
I want to know. I'll tip my hat to you, and I want to know how you did it, because if you did it, I can do it. And the Obamas, the AOCs, the Sanders, and Elizabeth Warren. They can go on down that declining list of intelligence. Anybody that's of a different color, that's a minority that made it in America, they're an Uncle Tom.
No doubt. Well,
They don't give them credit.
we're going to play one more video before we go to break. And, probably one of the biggest lies that has been perpetuated on the American people, going back to slavery and all of that, is who was responsible for most of the atrocities that happened to Black America. Who was responsible for them? Clearly, white people were. I'm not disputing that in any way, shape, or form. But if you want to break it down into political parties, I think this exchange between Ted Cruz and Senator Hirono of the great state of Hawaii pretty much explains it. And I challenge anybody to challenge the facts that Mr. Cruz lays out here. Check this out. We'll come back quick.
Bring the rest of us. Just because you think you are the smartest person in the world doesn't mean the rest of us agree to that, okay? Thank you.
Senator Hirono, I knew
Cruz.
Diane.
Senator Cruz.
Just a moment ago, our colleague Senator Hirono said there's a lot more to say, and indeed she's right. And in fact, I want to go back to her comments. She began by saying we have a long history of racial discrimination in this country. That's undoubtedly correct. And then she said, quote, we had poll taxes, we had literacy tests, we even had tests of how many jelly beans are in a jar. Mr. Chamberlain, when Senator Hirono says we had poll taxes, I want to ask you who we is, and in particular, what party was it that implemented poll taxes in the South?
I mean, I don't want to necessarily speak in every single case, but I'm pretty confident it was mostly the Democrats.
And what party was it that put literacy tests in place in the South?
Same answer, mostly the Democrats.
And what party was it that had tests like how many jelly beans are in a bottle?
The Democrats.
Tell me, what party were the founders of the Ku Klux Klan from?
I'm pretty sure that was the Democrats.
Indeed. In fact, Nathan Bedford Forrest, the founder of the Klan, was a delegate to the 1860 Democrat National Convention. What party wrote the Jim Crow laws in the South?
The Democrats.
And so on this side of the aisle were members of the Republican Party. Who was the first Republican president?
Abraham Lincoln.
The Republican Party was literally founded to oppose slavery. We came into existence because slavery was a grotesque evil, and it was President Lincoln, the first Republican president, who signed the Emancipation Proclamation, who won the Civil War, and that resulted in the freeing of the slaves and the passage of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. By the way, fast forward to the Civil Rights era.
And you hear all that from Ted Cruz. He's spot on, Ted. And on top of all of that, go back and read your history. The first elected black people to Congress, even from right here in Alachua County in the great state of Florida, were all Republicans. All of them, without exception.
Josiah T. Walls from Gainesville, Florida. An incredible story. Black man, very well accomplished. The Democrats shot at him. They threw him out of office twice, I think, and ran him out of office because they didn't want a black man serving. That guy had a lot to offer, and they did everything they could to destroy him, as they will. If it doesn't fit their narrative, they're going after him. And they couldn't hide him.
Yeah, and if you go by inflation and all that, Mr. Walls was probably the first African-American millionaire because he owned a very large farm. He actually hired former Confederate generals to help run it and Union people to do it. He had a big history here in Alachua County, and
he sure did.
He seemed to celebrate his freedom as a former slave by becoming a capitalist. So that's what
you imagine that. You imagine that. A capitalist. I know this is deviating from our agenda here, but I just have to bring this up. The lady that's in charge of housing in New York City, I don't remember her name. I'll have it for Friday. She is a communist. And she said in a meeting that they are going to take these properties away from the landlords that are renting them to people and they're falling in disrepair. and they're going to turn them over to the state because nobody should own property. She is a communist. That's what they want to bring in, John. That's what they want to do. That's what they're doing in California. And, it's just crazy that we're electing people like this. And of course, the voter base is ones that don't have IDs and things like that. So they're going to vote for the person that they think are going to give them free stuff. Doesn't work.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break. Before we do, I just want to remind you to make that call. Call Freddie, become a sponsor of our show so you can help us with our mission to educate, motivate, and activate people. And we're going to hear from one of our sponsors, the old ball coach here at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill. Take us to break, Ted.
No, we appreciate everybody being on the show. We want you to spread this show far and wide to get people out so we can educate them and activate them for this next election because I hate saying this here, election after election. This is the most important election in the history of the United States. So we'll see you after the break. But before I do that, I want to talk about Archer Automotive for all your needs on diesel trucks, cars. Archer Automotive and Transmission Repair, your full service diesel and gas repair facility. Been in business for over 20 years, and they're in the beautiful town of Archer. We'll see you after the break.
Hi there, this is Coach Steve Spurrier, and I want to let you know that by popular demand, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill's delicious brunch is now served in a premium buffet. You have spoken, we have listened, and we're now serving Gainesville's only elevated buffet complete with an omelet station, ginger sage chicken sausage, shredded short rib, plus you can enjoy bottomless mimosas and Bloody Marys. So join us every Saturday and Sunday from 11 to 3 for the best brunch in town.
And we're back at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill here. You heard from the old ball coach. We appreciate sponsorship of Spurrier's Gridiron Grill. Come and check it out. Well, Ted, I want to read a little bit from a Wall Street Journal article because big happenings over the weekend with the, quote, Iran war. Israel hits back at Iran after missile attack, renewing the fear of war. So Iran shot some missiles. This is all tied in supposedly with Israel trying to take out Hezbollah in Lebanon, which is a proxy of Iran. So they fired some missiles. Apparently, they were all shot down. Even the Houthis fired some missiles as well. And but Israel then hit back, and it is, if there ever was a ceasefire, it's over at the moment. What are your thoughts about what transpired over the weekend, Ted?
Are the Houthis? Is that Houthi and the Blowfish?
Yeah, they're trying to blow stuff up.
They sure are. This, John, this is typical of what you're going to get out of this negotiations or things going back and forth. You're going to see these proxy groups supported by Iran doing these things that keeps Israel engaged, which keeps, if they're engaged and they're bombing back and forth, there is not going to be a deal. This is where, and again, where I was with this, us going into the Middle East again, I think it was a mistake unless it was better thought out. President Trump, you're there. You need to go finish the job. We don't want this to drag out. And I think they did exactly what had to happen when the IRGC, the Iranian security forces, were firing those missiles. And we took them out. We took out where they came from. And I think we need to do that now. We need to do it immediately. And we need to just keep doing that and marching through the country and squashing everything like that. Because if not, you've got Kim Jong-un building up their nuclear force and saying you'll never bring our nuclear force under for us to denuclearize. And so they're watching what we're doing. And this is why we've got to bring this to fruition. And unfortunately, it's going to have to be a complete surrender on the Iranian side. If not, they're going to fester, and this is going to go on and on and on.
Well, it's approaching darkness in Iran. I'm talking about the actual darkness, not the evil darkness that's been in for a while. And there are some reports I heard just this morning coming in that there's some unrest happening on some college campuses over there. I don't know exactly what that means. I can't confirm it, but that's the reports coming out. They could be putting their life on the line. If that is
They are.
true, if it's true, they definitely are. If that is true, it could signal something that's happening right now. So we'll have to wait and kind of see. Of course, President Trump has been trying, at least publicly, to dissuade Benjamin Netanyahu from retaliating and from taking on Lebanon. But, if you're looking at it from his perspective, Mr. Netanyahu, it probably can't help it, because we talked about this a little bit on Friday's show, Ted, because right here it says in this Wall Street Journal article, it says Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was under pressure from his political allies and the opposition to respond to Iran's missile barrage. So he's up for re-elections. So clearly politics is playing a role in that. So what are your thoughts about all of that right there?
Well, go back to why this started. Why is there a war over there? It's because the Palestinians, Hamas, the Houthis, all these terrorist groups attacked Israel. And it was one of the most atrocious attacks. We all saw or read about the videos of the people being beheaded, the babies being beheaded, women being raped and then killed. And it was terrible. And there were a lot of people died. So Israel was attacked by an outside group. This same group and the people that were supporting that, Iran, is doing the same thing. And so Israel has every right to defend themselves. And I hope they do it hard. I hope they, bring this to an end. And the only way you're going to do that is for the radical Muslims, the Islamists, to be on their knees begging for mercy. But then even then, they don't give up. They come back because they have a jihad mentality, like Zoran Mandani.
Yeah, well, people need to keep in mind, because I've said this.
And Belchi, the CNN or whatever liberal program he's on.
He's on MS Now.
MSN Now.
He came originally from CNN and graduated to MS Now, I guess.
Yeah.
But I've said this many times, but if I say it, it bears repeating.
Absolutely.
If Iran has a nuclear weapon, they will use it. The current regime that's running it, I have no doubt they will use it. And they would eventually come after us and certainly Europe and all of that. But people need to understand, right now, the greatest impact beyond terrorism, which I'm not downplaying that at all, for Americans is the price of gasoline, basically, and how that affects inflation in general. But for Israel, it is literally their right to exist, because Iran is determined. They say death to America, but at the moment, yes, they could hurt us, but they could would try to go from the ocean, from the river to the sea.
They
want to wipe out Israel, and that is a real threat. So whenever you're judging Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israelis, you always have to keep in mind they are literally fighting for their very lives.
They really are. And then who else in the Middle East is countering any of the radical Islamic groups? Nobody. So we would be on our own. That whole coalition would be a lot stronger. And I don't think you would see Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Oman, and some of these other Arab countries siding with America if we weren't there, if Israel wasn't there. They would all be working against us. And so I'm glad Israel's there and that they're the first line of defense.
Absolutely. Well, we'll keep you posted on that. Absolutely, continuing developing story. So I want to switch gears again a little bit. We talked about America 250. We're talking about Ali Belshi a little while ago. But Bill Maher said something pretty interesting because, President Trump, to celebrate, part of the celebration was going to be a concert with various artists participating. A lot of them now have come out and said essentially they're not going to do it. It's all Trump derangement syndrome.
It really is. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, no doubt. But Bill Maher said something over the weekend that caught my attention. He said Artists pulling out of America 250 makes it look like Democrats don't really care about America. I think he's spot on, Ted.
I think he is, John. Look at the things we brought up over the last year. I remember that lady with purple hair and nose rings and all that. Nothing. I mean, it's not my type of decor, but people like her was saying that she would not celebrate July 4th to celebrate America, and she was cussing at people that were going to do that. And it really is a derangement that they have. A lot of it is Trump derangement syndrome, but it's the hate for this country that is ironic, or it's ironic because the country they're bashing is the very country that gives them free speech to say the stupid things they say. If they were to do that in any other country like China, North Korea, Iran, Cuba, Venezuela, the list goes on of despotic nations, they would be put in jail. And they're cussing the very thing that allows them to be free. It's like killing the golden goose that has given you your lifestyle, but they don't like it. And I don't think those people are ever happy. And it's unfortunate. I don't know how their wiring got crossed as they were growing up, or you got to blame a lot of it on our modern educational system, John. People weren't taught the basics. There's been this infiltration for over 100 years of telling people how bad America is. And I mean, look at Zohran Madani and AOC. They're the product of all that negativity, anti-American. When Zohran Madani quoted Eugene Epps, the founder of the Progressive or Democratic Socialist Party in America, so he's quoting him. So that guy was over 100 years ago, and so this has been a long time movement, and it's just not going to end well if we don't correct course.
Yeah, well,
and you correct course by educating people, and they vote properly.
Absolutely. Well, what I would say to people who are, talking about atrocities, America, shortcomings, America, we got plenty of them. There is no perfect system because it's impacted by humans. And we're a flawed species at this point in time, and we have been since the beginning of time. I don't know about 100 years from now, but right now we're a flawed species. We are. Man,
we sure are.
Humanity to man, period. All that kind of stuff. But I would say this to people, from Black Americans to the lady with purple hair, all that kind of stuff. Yes, there was slavery. Absolutely. But look where we have come from. Do we have a ways to go yet? Absolutely. But if you're looking for something to celebrate, why not celebrate the lineage of your ancestors that went through all of that, came out the other side, and have literally raised up America to the greatest country on earth? Black people played a heck of a role in that. Still are. Sure. Every nationality has. We're a melting pot, or we're supposed to be. So I would tell people, celebrate the good. Don't forget the bad. I'm not saying that, but celebrate. And if you had ancestors, which we all have had, that suffered in any way, shape, or form, celebrate their sacrifice and be glad that your grandchildren and your children don't have to grow up in that same country. That's the way I look.
That's well said. No, that's well said. And I thought a lot about that because, yes, there was slavery. And you got to go back to the Caribbean. A lot of the Irish were enslaved and sent to the Caribbean. White Irish people were sent to the Caribbean as slaves. They could work off their debt. And that's why I think you see a lot of crossbred mulattoes with green eyes and reddish hair, is because of the Irish genes. So we went through that. A price was paid. People that went through the black slavery in this country with lashes and all that those terrible things, atrocities that happened, they paid a price. They paid a price for the future generations to build from and do better. We had the Civil War. We had the Civil Rights Movement. We had all these things that have happened. What are you doing with what's been handed to you to make it better and to, I'm going to say the word, capitalize on that and make your life better, to honor the price these people paid? And if you're following into the race baiting of Al Sharpton and Velchi and other garbage cans like that, you're dishonoring the price these people paid. The way you honor that is to go out, become successful, maybe even a capitalist. Who knows?
Absolutely. Well, I want to play a Floridian now, a video. This is a guy that was invited to play at that concert that a lot of other artists pulled out. None other than Vanilla Ice Baby. Ice Baby. I want you to hear what he says because he admits he's not politically active at all, but I think he actually puts in perspective why we all should be celebrating America 250. Check this out.
On performing, even though we've heard that from the president, when so many other performers are deciding not to?
I don't know. I can only speak for myself, and I'm proud to be an American. I was born here and raised here, and this is my country, and I don't like anybody telling me I really can't be proud of it. And this is a huge honor to play the birthday. It's it's in a lifetime, 250. So I'm honored, and I respect everybody else. I know there's a lot of tension everywhere. This whole world is like a snow globe, but it shouldn't be that. And music is here to bring people together, man. And it shouldn't be that this music is dragged into politics. It's not fair. I don't even vote. I'm not a politician. I don't have anything I don't even have the first thing to say about how to run a country or do anything like that. I think this is a huge honor, and I'm wanting to celebrate the country I was born and raised in, man.
Tell us why you're still planning on performing.
You gotta love what he said. I think he's
You
spot
get over
on.
here.
I think he's spot on, Ted. Exactly where people should be with celebrating America 250. And he says in that video that music should bring people together. But I'm not sure the Democratic leadership even wants to do that, Ted. Wants to bring people
No, they don't.
They
They
want
don't.
to tear us apart. Go ahead.
They want to tear us apart, and they're doing a good job of doing that. But he is right on, and it probably has a lot of credibility if he's not plugged into the political system. Here's a guy that just loves America, and he's going to perform because he loves this country. And we need more people like that. Not to take a political stand. This is about the country, and let's celebrate the goodness. I mean, think of all the things that happened. We got rid of slavery in this country. Yes, there still is racism. There'll always be racism. But, you think of the great inventions that came out of America, the light bulb by Edison, the phone by Graham Bell, Alexander Graham Bell, the telegraph. The list goes on. The space program, polio vaccines, the antibiotics that have come out. The amount of accomplishments we did. Landing on the moon. I mean, that's America. That's America first. We're the ones that freed Germany in World War I, and the Allied nations in World War I, and the whole European theater in World War II. We put a kibosh on communism and Nazism, and there's so many things that we should celebrate about the goodness of America. Yes, we have flaws, but let's put them on pause for the celebration of the 250 years of America, and let's look at the future and make it stronger, so that we don't become but a footnote like the other great empires or nations, like the Greeks and the Romans, and the other great societies. Let's learn from history and work to make this country that much better going into the future.
Well, you mentioned about like in Germany and places like that, and basically the United States, with all our flaws and character defects, we have plenty. And there's no doubt about that. I've never just denied that. But the world would not be free today without America and the allies that helped us. There's no doubt. And Colin Powell, I have mixed feelings about Colin Powell, but Colin Powell said it better than anyone ever when he talked about that. And he said the only thing America asked was enough land to bury their dead. That's all. And I'm paraphrasing, but that's what he said. We didn't ask to take over and all that. Just a little plot of land to bury our dead. And he's spot on with that.
He really was, and I have a lot of respect for him. I felt he went to the dark side, but I can't blame him the way the deep state lied to him and got him to be their scapegoat on selling the war to the American people to go into Afghanistan and then later into Iraq. You know, they used him as a tool and he got hoodwinked on that. So I can understand why he had resentment, but he was just a great man. And guess what? He was black man.
Yeah, imagine that. And he celebrated America. But we're pretty much out of time. Tomorrow is primary days for many, many states, including Plattner in Maine. He's probably going to win the Democratic nomination, then we'll see. But it's going to be very interesting what happens in different parts of the country. So we'll bring all that to you on our Friday show. But get out and vote if you have an election tomorrow. There's a city election in my little town of Hawthorne, which I will show up bright and early tomorrow and cast my vote there. But remember to make that call. Call Freddie to become a sponsor of the show. But as I say, that's going to do it, other than turn it back to our captain to take us out.
Now, it's so important that we all get engaged in the process. Graham Plattner will be running in that election. And as John says, he probably will win the Democrat nomination. I didn't know much about him, but I listened to a pretty extensive background on him and I listened to him talk. And it's interesting because he's an outsider like I was when I came into politics. And his beliefs on a lot of things and mine are identical. He's fed up with the career politicians that say they're going to fix stuff and they don't. It's just all rhetoric, cheap rhetoric. They're more concerned about their reelection than they are about fixing the country. He's tired of the broken systems of Social Security going broke, our growing debt, and things like that. We diverge from there because he thinks government is the solution, and I think government is the thing we should run from. We need to. He's unfortunately, I can't say this for certainty, but I think he's in that camp of Tim Kaine's thinking your rights come from government. That's a scary thing because that lady up in New York that controls New York City's housing is the one that says nobody should own property, the government should own it. It's a terrible way to go. And I think Plattner is that way. Saying that, there's things that we're 100% aligned on. But we'll talk more about that on Friday. We want to thank our sponsors, Spurrier Grill and Archer Automotive. They are located at 15901 Southwest Archer Road, Archer, Florida. And you can call them for an appointment, 352-495-2485, open Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 5:30. And tell them John and Ted from the Political Pirate Podcast sent you. Take care. See you Friday.
Peace out, everybody.